Beekeeping for Dummies. We talk to author Howland Blackiston. This is episode 108.
Welcome to the KM108 Bay. Hi. Well, this is an interesting podcast that you'll be listening to today. We are talking to Howland Blackiston from Connecticut in the great old US of A.
Yes, and this is episode 108 of our Beekeeping podcast. So welcome to the KM108 Buzz. Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Gary.
And I'm Margaret. We are beekeepers from the hills of the Waitakere Ranges on the wild west coast of Auckland in the North Island, New Zealand. Our podcast is all about
beekeeping, gardening, and political issues sometimes, and environmental issues. And also, we often talk to people from around the world about how they keep bees or how they promote bees. And that's why we're talking to Howland this week.
Actually, and we've also been known to go off on tangents about other issues.
That's very true. And this week we'd like to thank Jennifer from Sea Willow Herbs. She's been supporting the KM108 Buzz on Patreon for 18 months.
Wow, woohoo, way!
So thanks, Jennifer. That's awesome. And you can check out her Etsy page on the Sea Willow Herbs.
Stop. What's Etsy?
Etsy page is like it's like a eBay kind of system, and she sells her craft work on there.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
She makes a lot of like beauty products on there.
Herbal healing products. Very interesting. So check out
Sea Willow Herbs on Etsy. So thanks, Jennifer.
Awesome.
And if you value what we do, please consider supporting the KM108 Buzz on kiwi.bz/banana.
So what we're looking at is that the interview was recorded in October 2016, but we've been waiting, guys. Waiting because
the fourth edition of Howland's latest book, Beekeeping for Dummies, has just been released.
Yay!
The show notes for this podcast are at kiwi.bz/dummy.
Dummy. Easy, guys. So thanks for listening to this show. We know that life is busy, and we appreciate you taking time to join us today, and you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. This is a great chat that occurs on this podcast, and, I've just been enjoying a day of, working in the apiary with some students and doing some education, and that's what this book is all about. And speaking of teachers, Howland is a great teacher, and boy, he's got a great sense of humour. So
yes, and as you find out in the show, it was the first beekeeping book I ever bought. So Howland was my first mentor, really. So
absolutely.
Anyway, Howland has been keeping bees since 1984. He's written many articles on beekeeping and appeared on dozens of television and radio programs. He's also the author of the Beekeeping for Dummies series of books.
Excellent.
So, Howland, what excites you about beekeeping?
Oh, for goodness sakes, what excites me? What doesn't? I started getting excited about bees. I started to think about it today, knowing you were calling, and I think it was about 55 years ago, and I was a little tyke in school, and somebody came to the school for one of those talks, one of those assemblies, we call them, and it happened to be a beekeeper. And he came into my school, and he had a movie about what goes on inside the beehive. And I was mesmerized. I couldn't believe it. I said, all this happens with a bug? I mean, this is just amazing. It just percolated in my mind for decades, really. I lived in the big city back then, New York City, and there really wasn't any beekeeping back then in the middle of the metropolis, and so I just sort of dreamt about it as a kid. But then fast forward a whole lot of years to about 30 years ago, and I happened to move out to a very country-like area, and I started to give it a go myself. And as soon as I got into it, I saw firsthand those wonderful things I'd seen in that movie as a child. Bee society, their organization, how each one has a role and responsibilities, and the majestic queen and how everybody takes care of the queen, and they make honey from the flowers and pollinate our crops, and on and on and on. And what's not to be fascinated? They're remarkable creatures, really great.
Absolutely. So you must have planted a seed in your little mind back then.
It's a very little mind, yes, and I did plant that seed in it.
Oh, that's fantastic! Because I saw some videos of you riding horses too when you were a young boy. Are you still doing that?
My God, what isn't there on the internet these days? Yeah, no, I have horses next door, but I don't own any myself. I was 5 years old. You're referring to some home movies that somebody posted on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was 5 years old. It was a summer holiday with my parents and my brother out to Wyoming, United States, which is out west, and the real cowboy country. And I just took right. I've always, what you really observe there is I've always taken to animals, all things living. So whether it be bees or horses or worms, or I had an ant farm as a kid. I mean, I couldn't get enough in the way of animals. If my wife let me, I'd be on a farm. I know I would be. But she doesn't quite share that enthusiasm that I do for everything living. I won't even squash a bug. The bug gets in the house, I won't dare kill it, or spider or whatever. I just carry it outside.
Well, they're all part of the ecology, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they are. Every one of them has its own role. And, of course, when it comes to bees, honeybees, which is really what we're talking about, their role, I guess it's wrong to say, seems more important than others, but they do make such a profound impact on us as humans that they seem sort of extra special and extra important to me.
How did you get started with the beekeeping then?
Well, when I moved to the country area, that is, moved out of New York City and the hustle and bustle and had space to start bees, I just happened to pick up a newspaper article. And there was an article about a local beekeeper, great fella, who passed away last year, unfortunately, but he lived to the ripe age of about 96 or something. But his name was Ed Weiss, and he was a well-known beekeeper in my parts here in the Northeast United States. And the article was about him, and he lived in the town next door. And I said, I'm going to write this guy. And I did. I wrote him a letter, and I said, "Dear Mr. Weiss," and I introduced myself. "I've always been interested in bees, and I'm thinking of beekeeping. Can you help me?" Well, about 2 days went by. These are the days of letters, And the phone rang, and it was Mr. Weiss. And he said, "Come on by the house. I want to show you some stuff." And so I went and visited him. He showed me his bees. He opened his hive. I looked inside. I was hooked. I was totally hooked. He also happened to sell beekeeping supplies. So several $100s later, I left his place with a startup kit, and I started my first beehive.
Oh, that's awesome. And he became a mentor to you, didn't he?
He was my mentor. He surely was, and he was also the mentor of thousands of other people, too, over the years. He was quite a character. Yeah, he was very knowledgeable and kind of a crusty guy, and you better get it right or you were going to get chewed out, I can tell you that.
So it must have been interesting working with him on the book, because wasn't he like the technical advisor or something?
He did two things. In the last edition, which was the third edition, he wrote my foreword, and that was shortly before he passed away. It was very sweet, very touching little introduction to the book. And he also served, I think, at least on one, maybe two editions, as technical advisor, just to make sure that his student had learned properly, I think, and to make any little tweaks and changes he thought might be appropriate for the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else in your family is involved in beekeeping?
Only indirectly are they involved. As my daughter's grown now, she's got a child of her own, and another one coming on the way. So she's grown, but as she was growing up with us, she became involved, not with the passion that I did, but she had no problem at all donning a bee suit and helping me at harvest time, honey harvest time, and and also showing off with her friends, because she would have her class over, her school chums over with the teacher almost every year that she was in school. And they'd come over once a year, and she would actually help me open the hive and pull out a frame of bees and hold the frame all by herself. And, of course, all the other kids thought, my gosh, she's so brave. How does she do that? And so she helped. And my wife's in charge of cleaning bottles, filling them with honey, and helping apply the labels. So everybody gets involved a little bit.
Oh, it's fantastic. Any signs that your grandchild's going to be involved?
Well, it may be. Now, she's only 3 years old. And but when she was here just about a week ago at my house visiting, she asked if she could go see the bees. So there's a little glimmer of interest there. And so I took her out to the house out back, and I managed to find a drone bee, which, as you and your listeners probably know, they don't have stingers. So I confidently, with great confidence, rather, picked one up and put it on her palm so it could crawl across her hand, and she was quite thrilled with that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, hopefully she'll get involved.
I hope so too. I could use the help.
but not lifting boxes, eh, Howland?
No, not yet. No.
So is it true that the Beekeepers for Dummies book is the best-selling beekeeping book in the US? I
believe so. It's certainly, I know it's one of the best-selling of the whole For Dummies series. It's done extraordinarily well. It's sold hundreds of thousands of copies for just a book on a narrow subject like that. That's pretty good. I mean, it's no Harry Potter, but it seems to have outsold all the other titles here in the U.S. Yeah, the publisher's a little tight-lipped about those things. I don't know why, but I was sort of prodding around once, asking them, well, just, how does it compare according to your stats, your statistics? And they say, well, let's put it this way. Here at Wiley, which is the publisher, Wiley & Sons, they say we call it the category crusher, meaning that it just crushes out all the other titles in the same subject. And it's not something to boast about, because I think I had a very minor bit to do with that. It's two things, really. One is having a great publisher that does fabulous job of distribution and getting the book out there. And I have no role in that at all. And the other is dumb luck. And the dumb luck is, all of a sudden, in the last decade or so, bees have become cool. They are on top of mind for many people. You can hardly pick up a newspaper, a magazine, or even watch a television news program without a reference sometime during the year about honeybees. So there's been a tremendous increase in awareness about honeybees and their importance. And I think that's had a profound impact on the number of people who get interested in bees and beekeeping and want to get started in the hobby as a means for helping save the bees. So it's all about timing. If I'd written the book 20 years ago, I probably would have been lucky to sell 100 copies, or maybe more than that, but not that many. But it's really, it's one of those things. It's dumb luck, really, I think, in large part, and a good publisher. And a good brand. The Dummies brand is a good brand.
I think you're being too modest there, Howland. I think the way you write is very approachable and friendly kind of style, and it's easy to digest. Well,
thank you. That's nice of you to say. I think, but aside from that, it wouldn't have had the success without the other components in place. So.
And the new version's coming out soon, the new edition. What can readers expect in the 4th edition?
It is. There's a 4th edition. Yeah, it's almost. I was shocked when they called me, and because the 3rd edition just came out about a year and a half ago. Usually, there's about several years between editions, assuming the book's selling well. If not, there are no more editions. But it's been coming out every few years. But they called after about a year and said, "We want you to do the 4th edition." And there were two reasons. One, it has been selling very well, but perhaps more than that, the Dummies brand, the For Dummies brand, is about to undergo a major rebranding, a whole new look, a whole new positioning, just a new take on the For Dummies series. So they're taking several of their best sellers and they're republishing them in the new format and the new branding. And so that's why they invited me. They said, can you think of some more things to say about bees that you didn't say a year ago? and so that's what we're doing. So it is a revision. About 30% of it's new material, and it's not hard to do, frankly, because one, the subject matter has become so popular that the things are changing faster than ever before. And by things, I mean, first of all, beekeeping is more of a challenge for beekeepers than it was when I started 30 years ago. It's not as easy as it was to keep bees successfully. There are a lot of issues facing bees between parasitic mites and colony collapse disorder and viruses and things like that, just health things. You got to work a little harder to keep your bees strong and healthy and productive. And as a result of that, there are more medications coming out, there are more protocols for taking care of bees, more ideas about managing bees, beekeeping. So it's pretty easy to update something when you've got a fast-moving topic like this. Things are changing, and so it makes it fairly easy to update a book to keep up with the times. So there's a lot of new information in it.
Oh, that's awesome. So are you going to cover things like CCD and things like that again, is in that book?
Yeah. And things update. One thing is for those people that medicate their bees, and I'm not strongly promoting that people just routinely medicate their bees because it's been overdone over the years. As beekeeping became more and more popular, there's been a lot of, shall we say, misapplication of medications, which has led to some medications and insecticides, or miticides, I should say, not working very well anymore. So rather judicial, if you're going to medicate, you have to be rather judicial in your use of these things.
Yeah, and in some states, they're going to start getting vets have to administer antibiotics, don't they, to bees?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's the thing with a lot of the synthetic chemical pesticides is that, the ones for mites, is if people don't use them correctly or they leave them in the hive too long or they keep repeating them, that the mites become resistant to them, don't they? So
they do, and you have to remember, you can understand how these things happen because people get interested in the subject, they get interested in bees, but they're not really, they're new at it. They're not professionals. They're learning, and there is misinformation out there. I don't mean unintentionally, but with so much to draw from on the internet and postings, anybody can post information, but it's not necessarily correct, and always, and so people follow wrong protocols, and it creates problems. So it's good to get good information out there. Yeah, getting the right information out is important.
Yeah, and the other thing people need to realize is that the information is maybe relevant to the area of that person where they live. What works, and
Well, it is, and that's it. Yeah, it's true. It is. I mean, we're in a big world, and actually, that's one of the challenges when you write a book like this. It's primarily written for the U.S. audience, but even in the U.S., it's a pretty big country, and we have areas in the United States that are darn cold all the time, and other areas like in Florida and some of the other southern states that are very moderate and mild year-round. And of course, the schedule for beekeeping is different from one area to another. So it's very hard to write a how-to book on any subject when you have such diversity of weather and conditions and rainfall, and that is even exacerbated when you're going overseas from home where you live, where I live, and they're trying to help beekeepers in Australia, New Zealand, and India, and Asia, and Europe, and Africa. I mean, you really need a version for each geographic location, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good idea. Yep. So you'll be coming to New Zealand to research the New Zealand version?
Wouldn't that be nice? They actually came out with a UK version of the book. I don't know who decides those things. I think you should throw your name in the hat. Why don't you? And say, you got to edit the version for your part of the world, and let's see what happens.
I'll talk to Wiley later on then. Yep, absolutely. And so, what do you think is the cause of CCD in your opinion?
It would be an opinion. It's not based on scientific research, so that's a risky thing. I watch everything and read everything I can get my hands on, and it still seems up in the air. But I guess the best way to answer you would be, I suspect it isn't one thing at all. It's more of a perfect storm of several things that have just converged together and created a nasty situation. Is it pesticides? Well, they might very well have a bearing on it, but I'm not convinced necessarily that's the only issue that's contributing to CCD. And in this new version of the book, I talked a bit about nosema. They're really, that nosema is nothing new. It's a disease, as you probably know, of the midgut of the honeybee, and it can cause, among other things, kind of put it in human terms, sort of a dysentery-like issue with the bees. And books have had information on that for years and years and years, but, more recently, in the last 10 years or so, it turns out there are two different kinds of nosema, and they're different. And this newer one, if you want to call it that, at least discovered or identified more recently, is a tricky one because it's not outwardly evident if your bees have it. With the version, what they call apis, when the bees contract it, you can see one of the symptoms very well, and that is the spotting on the hive of their feces. And that's a telltale sign, and you can take action, and you can use antibiotics, and that's that. But if they have the other version of it, first of all, you can't see that they have it because it does not impact them in the same way. And if you give them antibiotics in that case, the same antibiotic, some say that it actually exacerbates the situation and makes it worse. So there's a dilemma, isn't it? If they have one of the forms that I can identify, do I medicate them and run the risk of making it worse, not better? Because I don't know if they have the other version or not. So it's not like it used to be. It's more complicated.
Yeah.
But not to paint a bleak picture, people, beekeepers, they talk about these issues, and rightly so. But I wouldn't want it to scare off somebody who is toying with the idea of starting a beehive. It's still great fun. It's a great pleasure. It's not as dire as it sounds. And yes, you got to work a little harder than you had to work 20, 30 years ago. But the rewards are so terrific. It's worth the effort.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean it just takes a bit more research to find out. And the thing about nosema, it's difficult for a hobbyist to distinguish what kind, and even if they've got it,
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, it is hard. I mean, most of us, would lack, including myself, lack laboratory conditions where you can, where you can really identify tracheal mites or really identify this other type of nosema. I mean, it takes, laboratory equipment to do that, and most of us, we don't have that.
No, not at all. And so the new book is probably due out in about spring in the US, 2017. Is that right?
It'll be out in the spring in the United States, probably around March, I would say, something around that time frame. And it's the 4th edition, and it's newly branded with a new look and a new For Dummies format. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes out.
Absolutely, I'll be sure to get a version because we talked about this before the show, but I've only got the 2nd edition, so I'm sorry I missed out on the 3rd one.
That's right, and as I said, you're terribly out of date now.
Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, as I talked to Helen before the show, everyone, and the Beekeeping with Dummies was my very first book, so I thank you, Helen, for being my first mentor.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for buying the book.
Yes, no, it's a good book. I read it quite often. I think the thing about it, it's got like a lot of basic stuff, but it's got some good, it gives you some sort of primers on things to look out for and to do and things like that. And so I learn a lot from it, so it's good.
It is a basic book. It was intended to be so, and it's not a textbook. And if you're taking a course in entomology, it won't do the trick for you. But it wasn't written for that purpose. When I started as a beekeeper, there are a number of books out there on the market, and they were all so dreary because they were mostly textbook-style books on, very much like a biology book about bees, and you took some grim determination to wade through them and find out what you needed to do as a beekeeper. So I really set out to write a book for someone just starting out that set forth in a very chronological way, here's what you do, 1, 2, 3, and make it easy and fun to read and to avoid the use of big words and scientific phrases and make it as much fun to read as it is fun to be a beekeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got a bit of humour there, a bit of Howland humour, and I love the cartoons as well. It's all good. It's very approachable. It's an approachable book.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, be a great gift out there, guys. For if you know someone that's wants to get into beekeeping and doesn't know where to start, it would be a great start, wouldn't it?
Well, that's very nice. Thanks.
Yep, no worries. And Helen, if you could travel back in time before you were a beekeeper, what's one thing you'd tell yourself?
I always start earlier.
Yeah.
Your beekeeping is like, I suppose it's like any hobby or whatever, but you learn something every day, don't you? I mean, you really, you never are saturated with all the information that you need to know. There's always something new. You're always picking something up. So, and that comes with time. So, the longer you're a beekeeper, the better you are at it, and the more you know. And so, my only regret, if I could go back in time, would when I was in that class as a 8 or 9-year-old child and got excited about beekeeping, I should have started then.
Yeah, but I guess it would have been hard because you lived in New York, eh? So,
had it occurred now, it would not be, because now there's hundreds, if not thousands, of beekeepers in New York City, right in the city.
That's true, and it's all legal now, isn't it, as well, in New York?
Yeah, it's legal. There were ordinances against it up until recent years, so even though there were some renegade beekeepers in New York City, they were very much underground. Now they don't have to hide, and anybody can be a beekeeper. So so a lot of people have taken it up.
Yes, indeed. We have quite a lot of listeners in New York, so hello everyone in New York.
Yeah.
And so do you think you see one specific mistake that you see a lot of new beginners making?
Here's the biggest mistake, and I can sum it up with sort of a phrase I use, and that is, You need to become a beekeeper, not a bee haver. And the difference is, when you're a beekeeper, you are really caring for and watching and studying and understanding their needs, anticipating their needs, and providing for them and caring for them. That's a beekeeper. If you're a bee haver, you've made the decision, I need a beehive because it's a cool thing to do, and I'll stick it in the garden, and then you just ignore it. You just don't do anything. It just sits there. And yes, you have bees, and they fend for themselves, and they do the best they can. But that's the biggest mistake, is ignoring your bees. So don't be a bee haver, be a beekeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't got the time to look after the bees, it's probably better for you to plant flowers that can help the bees, eh?
That's the next best thing. Or you can latch on to some regional club and have one of their members put bees on your property and care for them.
Mm.
I'm a part of a regional club in our area here that we have about 400 members, which is quite amazing, actually. And one of the programs that the club offers is the placement of bees on other people's properties and the caring for them. Because there are a number of people who would love to have bees, but either can't care for them because, they're not able to, or they travel too much, or they're too elderly, or whatever, but they want them for their gardens or whatever reasons. And there's no lack of beekeepers looking for more real estate to put their bees on. So it works out quite well.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to do it, eh? Because you get the benefit of the bees and you can watch them and stuff, but you don't have to look after them, sort of thing, if you've got the time. No, I think that's so true.
Yes, if only children were that way.
You don't mean that.
No, of course. It reminds me of Downton Abbey or something, though, where they've got children and they come in at the cocktail hour and they get patted on the head and then sent off with nanny again. So I don't know. That's not quite being a parent. That's a child haver rather than a child keeper, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And they wonder why the kids grow up like like bad apples.
Yeah, some wacko, right? Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so, what's your plans for your beekeeping this season then, or next season?
Well, for me, it's a little unusual because, as it happens, I just moved 2 months ago from a residence I was in for 30-some years, and my wife and I moved into a new house just a couple months ago. So I'm almost like starting over again. I surrendered a number of my beehives to friends to take care of during the move between homes, and because I obviously couldn't care for them for the few months involved during the transition. So the fun part is I'm kind of starting from scratch. So I managed to move one hive here to this new home, but I'm going to be starting several new ones this spring. So that's all. That as a beekeeper yourself, you may feel the same way I do, and that is one of the most fun parts of beekeeping or being a new beekeeper is putting bees into a hive or hiving the bees. I mean, I find that just extraordinary fun and not difficult and dramatic, and the neighbors are all amazed, and they either think I'm nuts or the bravest person in the world, or maybe both. But it's so much fun to do, and you almost never get to do it more than a few times, because if you're lucky, your bees stay healthy from season to season, and you just aren't putting new bees in to the hive unless you're starting new colonies. And so I'm going to be starting new colonies, and with lots of package bees arriving and lots of colonies to populate. So I'm going to have some fun this spring hiving a bunch of new beehives. So that's what my plans are for this spring.
Oh, sounds good. Yeah, we watched your video on the third edition. They had it, so you had some videos there as well, and there was one there about you hiving a package. They're very good videos, I must say.
Oh, thanks. I'll tell you a little behind the scenes story about those. By the time my publisher got around to approving the addition of video to the book, which is a new concept for them anyway, it was autumn here. And that's not when you hive bees.
No.
So you can only imagine, first of all, the leaves turn bright orange and yellow and fall to the ground, and that's what had started happening. And that didn't exactly look like springtime. So we were running around with rakes trying to rake up all the leaves as they were falling down, as we were recording the segments outside, and otherwise avoiding any shots that showed the bare tree limbs with no leaves on them to make it look like springtime. the tricks of television,
yeah,
I
a
guess.
bit of movie magic. Yeah, I know we've heard of some films here, and they actually go through the tree and like glue leaves onto them to make it look like summer. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we didn't exactly have the budget for that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So what's the best way for listeners to keep in touch with what Howland's doing then?
Well, the best, I would love to tell you I have a website, but actually I don't maintain a website. So there's not a website to go to. In terms of what I'm doing, I hesitate to say reach out to me, but I don't mind when people write me. You think I should reveal an email address?
It depends if you've if you've got the time to answer it, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there's the Dummies website, which sort of you maintain, sort of thing.
You can go to the Dummies website and see what the status of the book is, and see when it's released and all that. So that's not a problem.
Yeah.
But that's probably the best way to find out about the availability of the fourth edition. Yeah.
And you're often doing talks at bee clubs and other organizations, aren't you, as well?
I do a lot of that, and garden clubs and you name it. Yeah, I do quite a bit of talking on the subject.
No, it's true, because we watched your one about, I think it was to the Retired Men's Association of Greenwich. It was quite a good talk.
Oh, really? You see, there's so much on the internet between me riding a pony at age 5 and then talking to old retirees. You really covered the generations there. Yeah,
exactly. Well, our investigative team is very good.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll be very careful what I put on the internet.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Howland. Just only put on the internet what you want the whole world to see. That's my advice to anybody out there.
I don't want to wind up like Mr. Trump.
No. No. He's a character, isn't he?
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Well, thanks so much, Howland, for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you writing your books, and I've got a lot of knowledge out of it. So, thanks for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's been an honor. Thanks a lot.
Wow.
Awesome. Wow. Did you enjoy that? That was just awesome.
You know what? I enjoyed the first time and the second time we listened to it.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting person and very friendly and just so natural, and yeah. So thanks so much, Howland, for taking time to talk with us. We appreciate it very much, eh?
Absolutely. And after the show, he talked about he's getting a flow hive, and we're going to get him on the show again to talk about that at some points.
Excellent. And it's so good to meet these kind of people and share their stories, eh?
Absolutely. And the show notes as before as kiwi.bz/dummy. That's right.
What else have we been doing? Margaret's been a bit of a technophobe, and we're not shy in saying that, but she's been using this great new app called Hive Tracks. And it's one thing that you can use to help you manage your bees and help you keep your records. And this app helps you to keep track. Did you like that?
Yeah.
Track of your inspections and your wood wear. It's easy peasy, and you can even update and then print off your records when you get home, and you can add photos and location, and it's a fantastic thing. And it's really good to compare inspection results and see what's happening in the hive and what's changed. So
Absolutely. Is it easy peasy lemon squeezy?
that's it.
Cool. And if you want to get this, it's for your phone or tablet. You can check out Hive Tracks application for a free 14-day trial.
Oh, bonus.
Go to kiwi.bz/Hive Tracks.
Yeah.
And we appreciate all the people that have taken up the trial, and we helps the Kiwi Mana buzz keep on buzzing.
That's it. And we love to buzz.
We love to buzz.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks for being with us today, and we hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed putting that together for you.
Yes, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks with the end of the season show.
That's it. That's coming up real soon.
Real soon. So see you later, guys.
See ya.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.